Welcome to the Business Greater Than You podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of men and women who have successfully transcended the frazzled solopreneur life and built productive teams with better lifestyle and income.
I'm Nelson Bars, the founder and owner of Utah Independent Mortgage Corp.
And I'm Liz Sears, founder and co-owner of My Utah Agents.
We're excited for you to listen, interact, and grow with us. So please share your comments below and let's get started.
All right, well, we're super excited for today's podcast episode with Bowen Gines, owner of Authority Roofing Utah. Authority Roofing Utah. I never noticed that you had the name Utah at the end.
I don't think he does he?
Well, so there's an Authority Roofing in Texas that I didn't know a lot about until I was on the news, right? I was on the news for all the hailstorms happening. And then the news anchor, well, whoever does their media stuff, pulled up all the logos and everything from Authority Roofing in Texas.
And you're like, wait,
so
that's
in
not
the
me.
end, it came up, and I'm like, that's not me. And she's like, that's not you. so it was pretty embarrassing, I guess.
Well, then during our intro, we learned that one of the things you should do when you're starting a business is find out if somebody else already claimed it.
Yes.
You know, it's funny, is my very first real estate logo, everything I made was the Sears team. And the reason why is because Sears team was taken, but the Sears team was not.
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up
That's
with
hard
that
to do nationwide, though. I've checked the state website for business name availability.
So when I first went into sheds, I was like, I need to be something unique, but something that kind of ties. So I called myself Stuff Shed.
Mm-hmm.
And Tough Shed actually sent me a letter and was like, hey, that's
too close.
And, you know, and obviously they said, well, it's different, you know, it's still different. And I was so small, they didn't care. But so I changed it to, and I looked for authorityshed.com. So I went from Authority Shed to just like, oh, I'll be Authority Roofing. And from that point, I didn't check, or all my accounts with suppliers and stuff were still Authority Shed. So I always go, what would I be now? So I'm always open to change. Let's name it something different. I don't know.
Bowen's awesome company. That's why I'm not in marketing. Perfect. All right. Well, we're super excited to talk to you today about your business.
Bowen is one of the, I think Bowen is a roofer that doesn't spend a lot of time on roofs, right, which I really admire, right? You run your business, you spend a lot of time drumming up business, you spend a lot of time doing bids and managing the projects and the people, but you're running your business, you're not installing roofs, right? Yeah. And we'd love to find out how you do that and give some tips to our listeners. We're all about building teams here. What we're trying to do is help people who are solopreneurs, kind of capped out with their personal production and income, and lifestyle suffers when you're at that level, and to help us learn how to build a team that's profitable and a better lifestyle at the same time.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your history. And you've had a number of different businesses. We already know about the sheds, and before that you were doing homes, right?
Yeah. So I guess I'd be a serial entrepreneur of sorts. I started lots of different businesses, and all of them I've made money at. Roofing finally was, like you said, one that I came to, and it changed because I wasn't doing the work, right? So like in my very first businesses, I was the laborer, on the E-Myth, you've read Michael Gerber's book, and he's just like, hey, you're the technician becomes business owner, right? And that's how most business, and in construction especially, I think it comes that way, because you go from being the tile installer to I'm the tile businessman now, and I learned all the wrong ways to do it. But we started framing. So my grandfather was a general contractor, and so I grew up doing that. But then with my stepbrother, I grew up framing. So I was framing houses, and then when I turned 23, I got my general contractor's license, and I started framing houses. So when I was framing houses, I took on crews, and then, a general contractor would find us and say, hey, come frame the house for us. So like my first house, we were making good money as a framer. It was in Heber, and we built this big house. I actually fell off the roof of that
Oh,
house.
no.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
I've heard you talk about how much of a proponent you are for safety harnesses
Yeah,
and safety
yeah.
measures. Is that why?
I went up to tell him the ladder. I said, "You can't set the ladder this low." And right as I was saying it, right, the ladder comes out. So I fell down from the roof, 3 stories, onto the ladder, onto the deck, So luckily I had a few break
Yeah,
my
the momentum
falls.
slowed down as you go.
Yeah. But I was always in the rafters. I was always the one setting the wood up, building the house, that we were setting the trusses. So I grew up doing that. So when I was framing, I had employees, and then it was the boom right before 2008, right? So right before that, before the crash happened, that they were paying us ridiculous amounts of money to frame houses in, like what I can build a house for now, I was getting for just framing a house in Park City, right? So my first contract was like $148,000 to frame a 7,000 square foot home. And it was, joist roofing and this, it was like stick framing. It takes more time. But he was just paying us a ridiculous amount of money. So even in the end, he didn't pay me everything he owed me. And I was still like, well, I'm good. Like, I couldn't believe we were getting, it was just shocking that I was getting paid that much money.
Does that happen a lot in construction?
No.
I hear stories of it sometimes.
Sometimes there's someone who needs something. Is that what you mean, like for pay?
No, you don't get paid what you're owed for subcontractor work.
Oh yeah, yeah. I learned the hard way how to, for my jobs, the cash flow of it, right? So I learned the hard way how to take half up front. If you don't take half up front, right, you could get stuck with the entire bill. How to manage your materials through a supplier. So that's, I guess, why I'm good at what I do now, because I learned the hard way through a lot of those. But if if you're buying all the materials and you're not getting paid till the job's done, you already have a ton on the line. And most of those guys who are paying you have been through it all before, so they know way better than you,
how to take advantage
work the law, or
just
how to
be
say no,
slow to pay or whatever.
Yeah. So I learned all the hard way, I guess. So, but anyway, so framing was really cool, but I had to be there, right? I wasn't out looking for other jobs. I wasn't like, hey, let's, like you were saying, let's be safe. Let me worry about the morale of the workers, like, get to work, let's go. It was more of a, let's just get it done type attitude. But I still had to do all the education parts where you have to teach people how to frame, how to, so.
Yeah, the training and all of that of the people.
And I think the big trouble, I think a lot of people run into, is you weren't out looking for other jobs, right? So one
That
finishes, and now you have a minute to look up and go, what's next?
Bit more feast or famine that way.
Yeah, and that's how it worked a lot in construction too. And at that time, people were fighting to find contractors. So for us, it was all word of mouth. You don't. I mean, how often do you see a framer advertise?
Yeah.
It's like, so-and-so framers, or whatever on TV.
Barely even have a logo, right?
Yeah, no, it's like if someone knows you can frame, they've drug you into however many projects they need. So, yeah, so that was nice. But then, so I went in 2008, and the market crashed. I started doing sheds because everyone was moving out of big homes, moving in with their family, and everybody wanted sheds. So I was making really good money, but with only 2 people, building a shed, or me, myself, building the shed. So I could put on my headphones and, build a shed in a day and make $2,000, But I didn't have shed after shed after shed. Like you would think, oh, that's great money.
Yeah.
But if you're busy building it, you're not
every couple
busy.
weeks.
Yep.
So it averaged out to just an okay income. And that's when I learned search engine optimization. That's why I did a bunch of courses and stuff and found website marketing, doing search engine optimization was I had.
So that's how you started finding your more businesses, doing it online.
So you were in Ogden, and SEO was just barely, right? It was at the first when people were paying ridiculous amounts to have people do their SEO. And I was just in the first of it going, I could get a construction company, you would say, hey, framing in Ogden, and they would come up, right?
Right.
So it was easy for me for sheds in Ogden and Authority Shed.
So the company you started was called Found Website Marketing.
Found Website.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
So, and were you still doing sheds at the same time?
Yeah. So I was still doing sheds, but I had people come to me who were roofers or in the construction trades, where I was buying I was buying supplies from my suppliers, and they were referring me to other.
Oh,
Everyone wanted their SEO done. I want to be the first one to come up, and and because business listings wasn't really a popular thing yet. It wasn't. You found, you searched and there was ads, and then it was websites that would come up. You didn't have like Google Business. And so SEO kind of changed when you went to Google Business listings. It was like all SEO just went out. If you were a business in the area, then they wouldn't refer you for. You could be the national first page listed, but a local business who did websites would come up over you, even though your listings were awesome. So there's constantly like all the Panda updates and different things for SEO where they slap everyone that was cheating, And so we went through all of that, but we were doing organic stuff. So our customers were always like, wow, this is awesome. So anyway, I still have a few websites that I do for people.
What was that company like in its heyday? Did you have employees at that company too, or was it just?
I had a couple who did sales and who called referral lists or things like that. Yeah, but it was kind of the same as sheds where it's hit and miss, right? You get someone who was all in, and you have a customer that was $1,300 a month, and then you'd have someone who was like, I can only afford a couple $100s a month, and you were just going on and doing search engine optimization, maybe creating a blog post or content for keyword stuff. And then there was people in the background hiding pages and doing just keyword, And they were showing up in front of you, and you're like, how are they doing this? They don't even have keywords on there. So that was really interesting from a business development standpoint, right? Because for marketing, it was a different beast. SEO was.
So how did you end up in roofing?
I was buying my shed shingles from a supplier in Ogden, and he was the manager over there. It was the RSG Roofing Supply, and one of the salesmen there, he'd give me my shed shingles. Well, I'd come in, and they're selling whole homes when I just wanted a couple squares of shingles for a shed. So he's like, oh yeah, you can just have those, don't worry about it. He knew, it was like no big deal to him because it was like $80 or whatever for shingles. And so I'd be in their boneyard. They'd have enough left over from a whole house that I could just take and finish a shed. So when I was doing that, some of the windstorms and stuff hit. And all of the workers there speak Spanish, most of the crews. And at that time, I would bring a crew on if I was doing a shed or a garage in someone's backyard and they wanted the house done. I didn't know how to shingle. Like, I wasn't a shingler. I can frame your house, and like they want shingles up. I don't know what flashings or what. It's going to leak if I do it, right? And so that changed for me. And that was the 100% when my business changed was people were referring me roofs, and I didn't know how to do the technician part of the work. And so at that point, I was hiring someone who was better than me. So I'd show up and I'd say, is that how you're supposed to do it? Like, I don't, right? Until I kind of was learning in it. Because for a shed, it was a straight shot. But when you have valleys and, ridges and rakes.
See, but now I think I know I've seen you come and do bids and talk roofs. And you know your stuff, right?
Right.
And you also have that customer service ability. And that's cool that you're able to get there, right? Because when you started, maybe you just knew you'd figure it out eventually.
Right, and that's how I did. Eventually, you're on a few jobs. You have guys come and install a roof for you that isn't done the right way, and another crew, you have another crew come and look at it to fix it. You say, "Whoa, you can't do that. You can't do." Oh, and so I'm learning how do I want it done, right? So now I would say I have more experience than the guys that I hire, but in the beginning I didn't. So now I say we do the flashings like this because I know they won't leak. We do this.
I find that a lot of times in my business, I want to be the smartest guy in the room, right?
Right.
It's like a pride thing that holds me back a lot. And, being able to just have, I don't know if it's the confidence to be the dumbest guy in the room and still run the show, still have the company, still be the one doing those jobs.
I think you're right on. It's like hiring an accountant, right? Yeah. I don't know what write-offs and what.
Yeah.
So I just go, what are we doing? And you just hope that you find someone that you're hiring someone who's way better at it than you, and that you can because you do, as a business owner, you have to hand it off at some point. You have to hand like the technician side off at some point. You have to, and trust that, hey, you might screw up a little too, but you're going to figure it out like I had to, or you're way better at it than me. So anyway, for roofing, that's how it changed for me, right? I started doing more and more roofs. So as I was doing more and more roofs, more and more crews wanted to work with me because I spoke Spanish and their employers didn't speak Spanish. And so they could say, hey, we did this thing and this took us a little extra time, this detail did. Let me pay you a little more for it, right? That's not a big deal. Like, but I know what you need because I'm speaking your same language. So that was an advantage to me, having served a mission and learned Spanish. That just happened to be like a great. So now I had all of these people that I'm communicating. They want to do more work with me. So if I had a job, I was first on their list, right? Oh, we like that guy. Oh, and he pays us right, and he takes care of us and make sure it's right. So being able to share the profit of like, yeah, I'm making so much on a roof, and I know when something's gone wrong, but what can I pay you to make it right for you? So now next time you're gonna know, I can talk to him and say, hey, I need a little bit more for that job. And so for me, when that started to work out for me and we had our first storm, you would get referrals, right? Just tons of people who needed their roof done, and you couldn't find enough roofers. And so I was just scheduling with them. I was saying, okay, right, come and do the roof, okay. And all I was doing was ordering materials, and then they'd show up in a day, tear the roof off, put it on, and I was like, this is amazing.
You're like, this is how to do it.
Yeah, and so in the morning I was saying, this roof we have to do, and I'd order materials, and then I didn't have anything to do the rest of the day, and I was like, I've been at work for an hour, and I have nothing to do because I can't go up and help those guys. They'd be like, you don't know what you're doing, just go back to the truck.
Yeah.
You know, and so that made the difference for me.
Where did you get those referrals? Because I think that's the value, right? The high value thing that you knew how to do was find the jobs.
Yeah.
That's all you needed. And that's like the 80-20 rule, right? You just started there. You never took on the rest of the 80% of the non-profitable things. You had the one thing that's profitable, but what is the trick in your mind to mastering that?
So I think in roofing, it's a little different because once you treat a customer right, they're going to refer their friends. And in the event of a windstorm, which a windstorm always comes, right? The hell always comes in any business, right? Yep. There's going to be the time where there's so much work, like there's so many loans that need to be refinanced, there's so many homes that need to be sold. And if your positioning is that I'm in this place and I'm treating people right, then the referral process happens, right? I wasn't doing very many roofs, but I had the ability to do more because I had crews that could do a roof.
Crews that were loyal to you and wanted to work for you.
And so even though they were doing work for other contractors, I was paying them a little bit more. I was taking care of them better, right?
You talk about taking care of them a little bit better. I know that I've had quite a bit of work done at my house from different crews, painting, concrete, things like that. And it's interesting to me often how unkind the person who's running the crew is, that they get really mad at them for making certain mistakes and are very derogatory and things. And just from what I know of you, I can't imagine you being like that. So tell me a little bit about that type of management style.
Yeah, so I'd say in any business, the language, like for me, I can speak Spanish with them, but the language is also the same. Like, well, what's important to them, right? I say it's Spanish because I'm speaking Spanish, I can understand them, but with your own employees or with your own contractors, like construction, what is important to them? Like, it's not how many jobs they do, but if my guys got paid a little extra on a job than they were expecting, that's the world to them. Like, I was managing expectations, right? Like, I know I'm getting paid this much for the job. That's what we've agreed to. And if I'm the one to bring up and say to them, well, we did a little bit more of this, or I couldn't get the trailer close to the house, so you had to haul it out there, even though they were going to just include the extra, let me give you a few $100s because that took more time for you. For them, it's like, oh, wow, like he appreciates my time. And it can be something small, right? I don't have to be a large gesture. It's just a few of those small gestures. Like, hey, I have a worker who drives a long ways to come to work, but like, I know you spent more on gas. right? Because you're driving a long ways, but I still appreciate your help. Let me give you a little bit for gas, right? And that just takes that little pressure off that life
awesome.
sucks. Takes the life sucks out of it.
It's like you're not trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip, right? You're not trying to get that last inch of profits that drives away your help, right? It drives
Right.
away your employees, or in your case, you have subcontractors, right? You're basically 1099. You have this awesome business model. There's not a lot of fixed costs for you, right? Is it all variable costs? Is there anything that you have to pay every month, whether you have roofing jobs or not?
No.
I guess your vehicle.
Well, yeah. So my only costs that I would have, I guess. So when I show up to bid a job, if I get the work, then I have materials are fixed. I know the labor that's fixed within a few $100s, right? Like I was saying, there may be something there that I want to figure for. But other than that, if tomorrow I had no work, then my guys are prioritizing to work for other guys that maybe they don't want to work with so much, right? But when I have a job, they're going to make time for me.
That's awesome.
So that's kind of an advantage. Roofing, it's a little bit different because you get crews who have a few guys who are, speak some English so they can communicate with homeowners. But a homeowner typically doesn't say, I'm going to hire a Spanish crew, because there's the fear of communication. So really all my job is communication. But really, as a business owner, that's all anyone's job is, I think, is, right? Just
And
the
managing
communication.
expectations, like you said, I
Yeah,
think is an art. you
yeah,
know? And it affects your future,
yeah,
because you can do a really great job. You can bend over backwards and fix a lot of problems, but if you miss a deadline by a couple of days and you set that expectation too tight, they're still upset,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I had a lady that was so mad at us because we had torn up. She had some flower beds that, in my defense, were not maintained, just like messy, right, growing all over the there. So I assumed it was okay to back the trailer up to there, put tarps down, and collect. Well, she's like, "Your guys threw all the shingles off on those, and it smashed all my flowers." And I was like, "All right," but I didn't say, no, that wasn't really maintained. I said, "What can I do? Like, we weren't paying attention. I'm
What a
sorry,
rare
right? So it was
response,
my
right?
fault." And I said, right? You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars for her roof. And I said, can I discount it $100 so that you can have someone come fix that if you want? Or, oh my gosh, she thought that was the greatest thing in the world, right? And now she was a huge fan of us, where before it was like such a small thing that, and for me to get mad at the workers and say, I can't believe you guys did that, and deduct their pay the $100, which my workers would be like, okay, yeah, we're sorry about that, right? But to them, I did something, and I said, sorry, I should have, it was my fault as the owner. So it was my fault, right? So ownership of it. I just feel like if you're the business owner and something goes wrong, if you didn't very clearly train your people on that thing, how can I make them accountable? I can say, well, I should have taught you that. So
One of the things we talk about a lot in our office is that we just don't blame other people, even if it's their fault. It just doesn't look good, right? We can't say, oh, the appraiser or the title company or the underwriter. And in the end, we're the ones who picked that title company, and we're the ones who picked that underwriter. It all comes back to us, and the buck stops right there. I think that's just a mindset of wanting to build long term,
Yeah, you know what else I thought of as you were talking about that is when a customer or a client makes a complaint, a lot of times all they want is for the principle of the matter to be resolved in their mind and in their experience. And so if they felt that you did something wrong and they tell you, I think you did something wrong, and your response is to be defensive, it wasn't me, it was them, that was so wrong, or you should have maintained your flower bed, then that just denies what they're seeking. So you just saying, that was my fault, I'm sorry, how can I make it right? Like you said, it's not surprising that resolved it all by itself, and then offering to pay the money. The other thing that I love that you mentioned is not only did you make it right in her perspective, but now you created a loyal raving fan, somebody who's going to refer to you and give you good reviews and all of that.
Yeah. I've always been with the referral side of it. for any business, I think, is something that doesn't get taken into account a lot.
Right.
Just one person down the road in 3 or 4 years is way more valuable than the few $100s to make someone happy, or to say, hey, I was wrong, or to do something extra too on the roof that we didn't figure.
So something that we've been teaching our agents lately is the 2 millimeter changes. And I think this goes right along with what you were saying, is that there's all these different points throughout the transaction or the job or whatever, where you can do these little extra things, communicate here, ask a question there, provide, a little extra value here, things like that. And at the end, your chances of getting a repeat, deal or referral skyrocket. So at first it feels like a waste of effort, all these extra things you're doing for no benefit right now. But then after you've been in the business for a while and you start to see the referrals, you start to see the repeat business, now it feels like an absolute waste to not do those teeny little things that are so easy.
Yeah.
A couple $100 or $100 for the flower bed.
Yeah.
So your team is very efficient, right? I'm a little jealous of the
I know, the no overhead.
The no overhead.
Oh, that'd be nice.
You don't have you don't have a lot of risk involved. It's really all gain. Do you lose money on many jobs? Do you ever lose money on the job overall?
No, not really. So I have some jobs, and my abilities in doing construction, I guess, in general.
Yeah, you got a long history of that.
Yeah, but if I have a roof and so we did one, we tore it all off and we dried it in. So my guys, I have a thing, because I have woken up in the middle of the night from a customer saying, my roof's leaking. So that's when my rules come into play, right? If a worker's going to work for me, I have the conversation with them of order of operations, right? What I expect to happen, and it's just so that I can sleep at night. The way a roof's dried in, the way, because when the storm comes in the middle of the night, I'm like, it's okay, right? Like, I know that, but a roofer comes in and what we tear off of the roof in a day, we don't leave a roof exposed, gets dried in. So they know the weather. If I'm going to tear off this much, how long is it going to take me to dry in, so I'm not there in the dark drying it in, right? And so there's kind of the order of the things that I require of them, that I say, we need to do these things. And I feel like that's always something I have to go over with any group that I use, right? So they know what I want, not just because they're doing work for lots of roofers. They know what I want specifically. Yeah. So this roof, they tore it all off. We got it dried in, but there was this rainstorm that was just like sideways torrential, right? Just, and all we've got's on paper, so it's getting on the siding and kind of coming behind the paper into the house. So they get water damage in the house. So when I get the call, hey, water's coming in, I say, don't worry about it. I'll fix any problems there, right? Like, I'll make sure it's right. We'll make sure things are dried out. And so if I'm in there cutting out drywall and, fixing insulation or putting drywall back up and patching stuff and matching texture on the ceiling or whatever, right? That's an advantage to me. The really half a day's worth of work to me was a disaster to them, but it's included. Right. I fix it. You'll never see a bill from me saying, well, and we had to do this, right? We had to patch that thing or fix that thing. Yeah. So that's kind of a way that it's an advantage to me.
Because you're not just a roofer. You're a general contractor, and you've got
experience, knowledge.
So I have a way to protect my risk, in a sense. But then again, having crews too that can take on lots and lots of jobs that are willing to do work for me over other contractors is my advantage.
And I think there's something to be said about the way you delegate, right? I mean, if I'm trying to take something away from my business, how often do I, give a task or bring a new person in? It's like, go to it, right? Yeah. And you're bringing in experienced roofing crews. You probably have worked with them before, but you still take the time to make sure they know
go over your
expectations.
Right. Yeah. But I think hiring in any business, like hiring a real estate agent that's experienced or has contacts, or right, like, and for you, someone who also has contacts, could come doing loans, with your company. It's a huge advantage, even though it's scary to be hiring that type of person, because you go, this is what I've got to, right? This is what I have to pay, or this is what I have to do, which is what I experienced early on. That was, so the very first year that worked for me, right? The very first year that I we had a windstorm, and there was a bunch of roofs going on, and I had the orders in, and I had the jobs lined up, and I had like maybe 2 weeks worth of roofs, which was like 10 or 12 roofs just lined up to go. And I was having materials delivered, but I got guys, so I had guys who were like, yeah, we're going to do the work, and and we had arranged a price, and they had started taking on the work for me. So I'd go out and I'd say, okay, I got to haul a trailer here and do this. And that winter, we worked straight through the winter, and I played video games most of the winter because I didn't know what else to do, right? Like, I should be growing something. I should be doing something, but it was my first time that I was like, I have all this free time. And I didn't know what to do, so I was like, I'm going to play games. I played games with my kids. So I sat around a lot, but in the mornings I was up, going, and then that few hours, and then I was like, that's it, I'm free.
For the day.
And I was making the best money I'd ever made, and I was just,
Wow.
this is crazy. But guys were doing the work, and they loved working for me. And so that's when it, I think though, right, it's working the way you want, but then you have to at that point I had to find a reason to do something, because I was like, I really felt like I'm lazy, I'm not getting much work done, right? Like, I can't even do 10 push-ups. I just felt, because I was used to being very physical. I was used to hauling lumber all day. I was used to carrying stuff, and so I was used to being fit and feeling good. So when I was just like, man, I feel like I'm putting on a lot of weight, and I just feel fat and lazy.
That's interesting challenge. So what did you turn to?
So I had to discover a new reason, right? A new something. So I had to look at my vision of what my goal was for business and construction. It had always been to provide for my family, because that had always been my fight, to provide and make money. And so once I started making money, it wasn't a big enough why. It was
So you needed to evolve your why.
And so I could see how business grows and just plateaus, right? Because I was like, this is crazy. But then other roofers were telling me, oh yeah, we do this much, that we do $5 million a year in materials. And I'm like, what? This is insane. And so there was so much potential to grow, and that was an average roofing company. And I was, we were breaking the $1 million mark on materials, like gross, And I was just like, never have made this much money in my entire life. This is crazy. But so that's when I found that I could take the additional money from the company, and I was using that to build homes. And so now my winters or my slow times, I'll get guys going on a roof, and I'm over framing a house. I'm digging and excavating a home, or I'm doing the work, pouring concrete. And so that's been kind of I can build that on the side and something for me to do. So I wasn't rushed. I don't, I'm doing it
as you go,
as it goes, and that's been fun, because my why turned into, how do I die and leave something that my wife is fine with, right? That she'll be okay. She'll have a house that's paid for. She'll have an income that's coming in. Because if I die right now, she has some money, but then she has to figure out how to pay for the home. She has to figure, right? Because there's no residual income or passive income.
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of, it gave me something for my family to look. I had to look further than my year or 2 years, right? I had to look 7 years, 14 years into the future and say, what does that look like for me now, being the fat, lazy guy that can't lift, right? Because at some point you're going to have to stop doing hard labor.
Yeah.
Because you can't. So that was kind of my larger why, right?
Yeah, that's a cool place to get to, where it's not any longer about just paying the bills every month, right? It's like that challenge was, my only focus all day, every day for so long, and all of a sudden it's gone.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story. Yeah. So I do have another question. You have always, I know that you moved into commercial roofing too, right? Yeah. And it seems to me like you have this lack of fear to take on a next project that's you've never done before, right? You did it your very first roof, you had never done it, and you just kind of knew, you didn't know what you were doing.
Like, I will figure it out.
Yeah. How has that played into the growth of your business and your ability? Like, how do you do that? Where's that?
Yeah. So I think early on, when you're growing a business, right, you're taking a lot of risks from not having a job already. That kind of feels like, at first it feels like, man, this is dumb. Like what am I doing? Like I need an income, right? But for me, I kind of started out after working for contractors, I kind of started out knowing I can replace that income easy enough, because in contracting, if you're able, right? And I try to say to any contractor, I think if you are just a contractor and you know a trade, I could have you making 6 figures in 2 years, easy, because you are just a skilled laborer and you can estimate jobs and you can get them done. And that's all contractors are looking for. So in construction, I would say it's kind of a cheat code. You know, if you've learned a trade, you can provide, you can earn an income. So every job for me is a new boss and a new adventure of, right, a new problem. And so when I was taking on commercial, so one of the ones that I did take on, I was in coatings. It's started to become a popular thing, and Geico has this huge coating system for roofs. And they had a guy clear out in Springville who has a huge commercial building. They have tumbling and everything inside, right? But it's like 300 square. So most of the roofs I was doing are like 30 square, you know, in comparison. And this commercial was 300 square. So I'm like, this is crazy. And it's a coating, so you would go over the metal. So you had to prime. So I became a painter. You had to prime the whole roof. Then you had to put the coating on. And I was like, I'd really like to learn to do that. And so I went to do a training, because people had told me, oh, there's a lot of money in coatings, right? And I went to do a training, and this guy had gone out to give him a bid, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to install the roof, right? But because I'd gone out and done this training, and I went back east, right, went through all this training, and I was waiting for the plane to come back, and they called me and said, we want you to do this roof. And I was like, yeah, I know how to do the roof, right? But I think there's an advantage to learning or saying I want to do something. You know, if you're religious, it's easy to go, right? Like the blessing of learning something new or putting yourself out there is that's, you know, your heavenly Father in a sense, or God, whoever you're, like, appreciates the effort of doing something. And if you're religious or you're not, right, the karma.
Well, even if you're not religious, the term is the universe rewards.
Yeah. And however you want to look at it, if you are pushing forward to do something, then when the opportunity presents itself, you're ready for it, right? And so I came out to do this roof, and I remember going to pick up the check, right? I was nervous. I'm going out there, and this guy says, another guy. So I priced this job, and it was like $156,000 to do this guy's commercial roof. And he said, I had another guy who came, and he priced it at $148,000. So he was just under you. He said, I like you more. Will you do it for less? And I was like, well, you know, and I didn't, like, inside I'm like, heck yes, I'll do it for less. There's like $90,000 worth of profit on this job, right, after materials. And I'm like, this is insane. And I had heard that commercial roofing was that way, right? But you're dealing with one customer, and the job's bigger. And usually people who own properties own multiple properties. So you've built a relationship with one person, which how many roofs I have to build 30 relationships to do that kind of work for, you know, for that many people. And so when he trusted me to do that work, I remember taking the check out. I was still doing roofs, and I was making okay money. This was before I was really like making like a windstorm or hailstorm type money, where you just have tons of work and everyone just can't find roofers, right? There's just a demand. And so I remember taking this check, and he did the first half was $70,000. And I was taking this check over to the bank to deposit, and I was like, what? Like, this is insane. Like, I've never held a check for this much that's all mine, right? And I know that the profit on the job is even more than this, because my materials were going to be 60 or 70 grand, and the whole job was 140. And I was like, this is crazy. But when I finished the job, because I was estimating the materials, when I finished the job, I took back $20,000 worth of materials.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? Like, because I wanted to be safe on the job, and I was bidding everything, and I was so scared I wasn't going to, right? You're going to screw up on this little, I'm talking like millimeters thick of material is going to be $10,000 on the job if I don't get it right. And so when we finished, and I had realized, wait, I did the math wrong, right? I'd added a third when I needed to add less than that. It was like 1.3 for the ups and downs of the roof to cover it correctly. And I was like, I've got all this extra materials in it. They took it back for me. And they just stocked it again and gave me, 20 grand. And I was like, yeah. And so when I had that check, I remember walking through Walmart going, I've made it. This is it. Like, right? Like, if I
I
get
love how you're walking
one
through Walmart
job,
being, and I made it.
I was making $25,000 in the year. Well, that's what, about 25 grand a year, and just barely making ends meet when I was doing sheds and construction. And by the time you paid for materials and everything and write-offs, you were claiming 25 when you're probably in the 50,000 range. But I took that check and I was like, this is like, I don't even have to work for like 2 years. I could just live off of this. And I put the check in. I was walking around Walmart. I'm going to reward myself. And I walked around Walmart and there was nothing there I wanted. I was like, nothing. I was looking at all the TVs, big screen TVs. I was like, I have a TV. I don't need a bigger TV, right? Like, and I realized how spoiled I was. My needs were met, right? And I didn't want anything else. And that's when I had that struggle with, I have more money than I need, right?
More time.
Yeah.
And more time.
And more time than I'd ever thought, yeah. So I think that struggle part is that, in the first, you have to realize it takes like that sacrifice, but of so long to learn your trade and to be good at it, and then to realize where the profit is to be made, right? And then to find somewhere where you fit, but then to go, I've made connections for several years, and I tried all these other things, but I hadn't I just ended up in construction over and over and over again. But I made connections there, right, with people, and I built relationships there that you have to do. You can't be a year into your business and go, I'm not making any money, right? There's some sacrifice, like the law of the harvest, right? You have to sacrifice for a long time before you can reap the reward of everything else that comes. Once you've been in your trade for, how long, and you're finally like, man, now I'm finally at a place where I'm like, I feel good, right, and I can give back. And so that's
a cool success. And I'm thinking about the moment when it all changed, and it was when you went from building sheds yourself to bidding roof jobs, and someone else did the roof jobs, right? And most people who we talk to, they're building a team slowly. They're hiring a couple people here and there and teaching them over time. And someday the goal is to step away and just be the business owner, right? And for you, it was like you just started that way. I mean, you didn't start that way. You flipped a switch to it as soon as you decided roofing, and it was like because you didn't know how to do roofs.
Kind of forced you into not being the laborer.
Not being the technician. And I think that that's kind of a secret to business too, is if you're hiring someone who can do the thing that you do from start to finish, right? The sell portion of it, or the installation portion of it, or the accounting portion of it. If you're hiring someone and you have to be there, which is when I was framing, I was the foreman. I had to be there saying, this is how I want it done. And they had questions all the time, right?
All day.
So you would be putting a person in that position. If you're the one, taking phone calls, you're the one, whatever, as they're coming in, you're the one, then when you have someone that you're working with, you're doing that job already. So they don't think that's their job. So when you start a business kind of saying, okay, my job is this, until I hire someone to replace me, right? Like I'm doing the accounting, I'm managing my invoices. Until I hire someone, that's their job. And then you have to hand it over to them and not be they're asking you questions.
There's like an ego play in that too. I imagine when you were the foreman and there's 10 guys coming to you all day asking questions, strokes your ego, right?
Yeah.
You're the boss, man. And it's almost the opposite when you flip to roofing and you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And
Don't
you're
ask
like,
me.
teach me. I don't know.
So why did that leak?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of humility. I think ego gets in the way sometimes.
I had a buddy who did HVAC, and he was the technician also, but he had a group of guys, and he was driving down the road on his bullet bike and got in an accident and was laid up for like 6 months, couldn't do work, like broke some of his back, right, like that bad. And he said that's when his business changed, because his technicians had to be the go-to person. And he wasn't able to be there. He couldn't answer their calls. He, out on pain meds. He was in physical therapy. He said, that changed my business for me. He said, I became more profitable because they were handling those things that I thought I had to handle. I'm the guy. I've got to handle.
Wouldn't let them handle.
And you wouldn't, yeah. But like you're saying, it's an ego thing. Like, I'm the boss. Like, if there's a problem, come to me. Let's fix it the way I want it fixed. Yeah. And not realizing, Joe Schmo, he can fix that problem. They can figure it out,
Yeah, one of our previous guests had mentioned about how you get your business to a point where you can leave for a week or two or a month, and your employees are like, finally, employees, they're like, let's run with it,
Yeah.
Nobody's in here just nitpicking, telling us how to do everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and being forced into it, I think, was an answer for him. He said he had to learn the hard way. I was like, yeah, that's how it worked for roofing for me. So I had someone take over the technician job, and all of a sudden I was like, man, I can go find the next job. I can go, build relationships. I can go find another contractor who may need roofers down the road. Mm-hmm. So we grew really organically. When you would have a storm chaser would come through and grab roofs, we were still organic. Mm-hmm. So for me, I can grow and have referrals and have people who want to do jobs. Now, ultimately, I could make more money employing crews and paying them hourly. The crew wouldn't make as much money. They would work for me hourly. I would make more money, but then I would have a lot more. See, because I still have to pay for general liability, for workers' comp. Being a general contractor, being over a subcontractor, you still have to pay for those things. So if someone doesn't pay their stuff, I have to pay for it. Someone's not covered to be on a roof, right? If I have a crew come in and they don't have their workers' comp correct and whatever, well, I have to cover that. And so there's a lot of things that I still have to pay for on top of.
So we did find some fixed costs for your business. We found
per job, yeah.
Insurance. What about your general liability? It's still variable.
General
cost.
liability is still.
There is
well,
nothing
for
fixed
workers'
to
comp,
cost
it's
in your
based
life.
on actual labor.
Wow.
Right. So, but yeah, like general liability is a year thing, right?
Uh-huh.
So within a certain.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Well, that's an amazing business you've got. What advice? What do you see contractors doing that you just wish they would stop doing? They're doing it wrong.
Doing it wrong.
Do you have I think there are probably a lot of trades listening, or they will. Hey, here's a roofer who's figured something out. I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, advice you would give to a business owner in trades.
Yeah, trades. I think it's very often that a tradesman gets paid on a job. If it's a $10,000 job and materials cost him $5,000 and labor costs him $1,000, right? I think it's very common for him to say to himself he made $4,000 and to go out and spend $4,000. And now I need the next job. So every job's managed, and then everything that comes out is I made $4,000. Instead of setting up the cash flow to go in the right places, to maintain tax money, because all this is stressful. So I think for construction businesses specifically, cash flow is the worst, right? Mm-hmm. They take too much out. They got to go get the new truck, right? And that payment comes out of the company, and now the company, they've got to find, even though they're not seeing the way it's managed and how much they're really making, right? So my argument is you made $4,000, but you've got taxes that's got to come out. You've got your savings for the company that's got to come out for marketing and advertising and whatever else. And so really you maybe only made $2,000 because in your head as a contractor, if I only made $2,000, I didn't make enough for the month, I got to go to my next job. But I don't, because I made $4,000. I put it off and whatever, and then I get the next job, right? Because I made enough. And I don't know that I didn't make enough. I think I made enough.
Just it's a case of not doing the books and not looking.
Yeah, we might be good with measurements, but we're terrible with numbers.
So have you had a bookkeeper? Do you have a bookkeeper?
Yes, and that is all the world of difference to know where I'm at.
At what point would you recommend somebody hire a bookkeeper?
Very first. Okay. I would say your first hire in construction, if you're a construction worker, is someone for your accounting and bookkeeping. To say this is where you're at, this is what you owe in taxes, and if you've got quarterlies you have to pay, or if you're not.
Especially if you're doing payroll.
Right. There's a certain point where you'll just get to the end of the month and think, man, I didn't make any, or the end of the year, and I didn't make any money this year because we got $10,000 in taxes. And you're like, how? I didn't make any money. You just burn it. You just burn it up, right? Materials will, like when you can return materials and do different things to save on your costs, but you're not paying attention to those costs because you don't even know it's a problem. So being aware of that, I think, is like I learned the hard way when I was doing sheds. I would build a shed and then say the shed's $4,000, and I told you, yeah, I paid $2,000 in materials, and I made $2,000. When really I didn't make $2,000. I still hadn't paid any taxes. I still hadn't paid. There's all these things like I hadn't saved any to set aside for the company. I hadn't set any to save aside for my personal emergency fund, right? And so that cash flow, I think, is the most important thing that you know, because once you manage that, the stress of the next job goes away. And I call it my go to hell fund, because you can say to a job that isn't enough money, I have to take this job because I need the money. You can say that's not quite what I need for that job, and I can wait because I know where my money's at, and I have a little set aside. And winter comes every year, and people get slow in construction, and it's like when Christmas comes every year, but you still
Nobody
I got to
knew it
put it
was
on the
coming.
card. I didn't plan for it once again. And in contractors, we know winter's going to get slow, but what are you setting aside for your few slow months or when the market doesn't need roofers, right? Like it's great weather and there's no leak.
Exactly. You know, we have a thing that we do that we teach our agents every single year. And I just realized it really applies to your line of work as well. And so being 100% commission is what most realtors are and contractors as well. So what we teach them is have 2 bank accounts. And so give any insight on this if you want, but I think this will be good advice for quite a few of our listeners, is all of your money that you get for profit, so the $4,000, the $2,000, whatever, goes into a business account, and it is not considered yours at all. And instead, what you do is you pay yourself a salary, basically. And so we say, especially if you're cash flowing enough to have an LLC that you file taxes as an S corp, then you get benefits that way tax wise. So you pay yourself the minimum salary, you know, let's say on the 5th of the month, and then the rest of the money you need to pay your bills as an owner dividend on the 20th. But the whole point is that you don't live out of your business account. You don't buy anything personal out of your business. You live on a budget out of your personal. And so all the money goes into the business, you get paid a salary each month, you live on your budget, and your business account grows. And once it gets past a certain growth point, such as 3 months of expenses or whatever it is, you make sure you have your money for your taxes, the money for your marketing, the money for whatever, that all gets paid out of business, and you still live on a salary in your personal. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I was telling you that big roof that we did, it's been 3 or 4 years ago. I was so scared for taxes, right? So I set aside
Brand new
all that
tax
money.
bracket.
I was like, I made 90 grand. I did 2 roof coatings that year and had made more than I'd ever made. And I had 75 or 80 grand sitting in the bank because I was like, I'm not touching it. I know I'm going to get taxed, right? Like I know there's going to be a big tax.
That foresight is actually quite admirable, by the way.
And then, so I waited, and when the tax year came, right, and I had my taxes done, and my tax bill ended up being like 32 grand or something. And the lady, when she told me, right, they'd waited the whole year.
She was probably so scared to tell you.
And she's like, so your taxes, you're paying 32,000, right? And I'm like, okay. And she's like, do we need to set up a payment plan? Or like, what are we going to do? Like, she's like, you made a lot of money. And she was afraid I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Most contractors don't.
I'll just write a check. And she's like, oh, okay. Yeah, right. Because I was.
Well, you were expecting
Yes,
this.
because I had learned the hard way when tax season had come around.
This all comes from experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't shared all of the hard times you've been through, but you say you learned the hard way.
Right.
You know, it's not like you just figured this out when you were 23 and you got your general contractor's license.
So what you were saying, Liz, is I'm on a budget, right? So personally, I'm on a budget first. How much can I take and meet my needs was my very first question. So I said, okay, if I'm paying myself $4,000 a month or $5,000 a month, covers my mortgage and all my living expenses, and now I have to say to my wife, honey, I know I'm making $10,000 or $15,000 a month, right? But I'm not really. Like we have to pay ourselves like this budget. Then it opened all the opportunities for my business because now I had, when money came in and I could save for my taxes or for whatever, I could have money sitting there and I could say, I have to have money for taxes. I have to have money for marketing. I have to have money for my emergency fund, right, for the business. What if I'm out of work for 6 months?
Yeah. What if
Yeah, and
you got in an accident?
that's just the way the market is, right? Winter could be nasty, or everything gets tight, and people are like, I can't do that project right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened in 2008. I was $1.2 million in debt in 2008.
Whew.
And I had 4 homes, and that's how I learned the hard way.
You became very financially conservative.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
After
So I
that
was
experience.
if I made money, I didn't want to do anything with interest. I didn't want to do any lending. I'd had hard money on spec homes. I had right, like I tried all the things, I guess. And so when my work went away, all the people who were in my homes moved, rent prices came down. I had people who I got stuck with a mortgage for a few months. I had one family who was in, maybe because I don't have the heart of a slumlord, I guess. I don't know. But they couldn't make the rent because he was working for Wells Cargo, the trailer company, and he lost his job. And so they're in the house for 2 months, and they can't pay me rent, right? They've given me a check and it's bounced. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to, he's trying to do whatever he can. There's no way that he can afford the house that he's in, that I own, and now I have to pay the mortgage, but I don't have work as a construction worker. It was like this whole perfect storm, right?
It was 2008.
And in 1 month, I was responsible for $12,000. In the second month, $24,000 worth of mortgages, right?
Yeah.
On all these homes. So anyway, I short sold and, did a lot of stuff. And finally, I rented, right? I rented a small home in Roy for a long time and started the shed company while I was trying to get out of debt and trying to get everything arranged. And like I had materials on houses, and I learned how to negotiate materials with a lawyer. And I was scared at one point, and then so I learned a lot of things that I was like, I didn't know I could pay less for the materials, eventually, that they would just take something because everybody had huge bills and huge. So yes, I learned the hard way.
And you emerged from that with
now I have
different
no
mindset.
debt.
Yeah, you do everything on a cash basis, and
That's amazing.
you also, but it's even beyond that because you have no fixed costs.
Right.
You've built a life around low risk, and it's working out great for you. But you don't. This is what I want to point out: is you still have a team, right? You still have an amazing lifestyle, a successful business that
awesome
doesn't take you
workers.
12 hours a day.
I have awesome crews who do stuff. General contracting is kind of the same, where if I'm general contracting a home, I'm bringing in electricians, I'm bringing in plumbers, or I'm doing it myself, right? So when I'm building a house now, if there's a trade that I can't get to or I don't want to, I can bring someone in to do drywall, is the same as the roofing for me. I'm really just managing, and then I'm looking at their work and going, was it done right? Can I pay you yet? Right? And so, that's kind of general contracting in a sense has been that for me.
Yeah.
Kind of giving me that freedom. I can take on 20 roofs in a week, or I can take on none. And that's been awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's been really cool.
All right.
You ready for the rapid
get
fire
asked too much
questions?
time.
You're gonna go for them? Okay. She doesn't even need a cheat phone to look at.
Nice.
Yes, I do.
Oh, you do? All right. You got them memorized. Come on.
I actually might have them on my phone too. I just
I got it.
realized that. Okay. All right. We're going to go into our rapid fire part. What is your favorite podcast?
My favorite podcast, How I Built This with Guy Raz.
I love
That's
that
a
one.
really
That
good
one's
one.
fun.
That's probably one of my favorite ones.
Perfect. What's your favorite business book?
I would probably say The E-Myth.
I knew that was coming because you mentioned it
Revisited.
3 times.
And he has one that he does for contractors too, but it's super interesting in the sense that you learn roles of a business, and like that when you're talking about the technician and who's really the difference of being a business owner, right, than knowing what's the actual job that needs to be done, which I'd never thought
I think
about.
we're losing the idea of the rapid fire.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
This is-
That's because this is my
all of
first
this
time
has
in a
to
while.
fit in
okay,
1 minute.
in 1 minute. How many hours a day do you work?
I work however many hours I want to work in a day.
Oh,
So-
well, then that's the answer to the second one, which is how many do you want to work?
Oh, yeah. So it could be a few or it could be more. I tried to do more because now I've changed, my goals, right, are different, which I had to learn the hard way.
Love that. And then considering Okay. So you've got the hours that your team works, the hours that you work, the hours. How many hours a week is that you have to play with?
Yes. So if I take on 10 roofs, we could be 1,000 man hours.
Wow.
Because we have 5 or 6 guys on each crew. Or I can be dealing with, right, just my time. So depending on who's doing what, right? And if I have a big house going on, right, you could have other crews doing other things that I am responsible for. So I guess that.
Love it.
I don't know. Lots.
Depends on the week. So who do you really look up to in business as a role model, and why?
As a role model in business, my grandpa, he was a general contractor, but he did it himself, right? He's an excavator, but he built it all himself, did most of it himself, hired a few guys, but he was self-employed. So he taught me the lessons to say the difference between, right, a good business like mine where you make good money and can save good money, as opposed to an awesome business, right, is hiring people, is to being able to have people. Yeah.
Sweet. What's the best piece of advice you can give our listeners?
Best piece of advice would be, don't be so hard on yourself in the beginning, right, when you're starting a business, because it's going to feel like at times you're not making back the money you want to, but to be in it, find something that you can be in it for the long haul, because it's going to take 4 or 5 years until you're making decent money, and you're not until 7 to 12 years that you're actually like, I'm making great money. So the sacrifice, right? Yeah, a little persistent.
The Bowen Gines with Authority Roofing. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Authority Roofing.
.com?
Utah.
Not authorityroofing.com. Don't do that. That's
a Texas guy.
Authorityroof.com, right? That's my number on there. And then, if they want to listen to the few episodes we've done on my podcast,
tell us about
listen to that. That's the 30-minute business, right? When we talk to people who built their business or the struggles they went through, and we've got about 12 to 15 episodes.
I had a chance to be on it. I loved it.
You, Nelson, was on it.
And I'm going to be on it.
Needs to be on it. Yeah, but I think it's way awesome because it kind of goes through from the start to the struggles to, right, what you, and like yours, we get to talk about the specific thing to someone's business, the thing they need to do to make it better. So I've enjoyed doing it. I hope it's worth listening to, but we're still just starting out.
Complimentary to what we cover.
And the episodes are not 30 minutes long.
They're not 30 minutes long. No. Yeah, not really. The goal was to build the website, right? So you could go to it and spend 30 minutes on your business. But the episodes are an hour.
They're nice long form where you get to really dive in.
You get to pick someone's brain.
Yeah, I like.
But so that is, if you go on any of the podcasting services, right, like Google or Spotify or any of those, you go on and just search Bowen Gines, and you can find me on there. 30-minute business doesn't come up as easy as if you search my name's a little more unique, Bowen. Yeah.
Well, awesome, Bowen. Thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing
Thanks for having
the details of your amazing business.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.